The sound of shattering ceramic explodes through Pine Brook Diner. Diana Campbell's face slams into the wooden table with a sickening thud that makes every patron freeze mid-bite. Coffee sprays across white plates. A fork clatters to the floor. Her cheek presses against the grain of the wood, tears pooling beneath her eye, mixing with the spilled orange juice that now drips onto her uniform. "Stop resisting." Officer Clinton Maxwell's voice booms above her, his knee driving into her spine with enough force to steal her breath. "I'm not." Diana gasps, her words strangled, desperate. "I can't breathe. Please." "Shut up." Maxwell twists her arm behind her back. The handcuffs bite into her wrists with a metallic click that sounds like a death sentence. Behind the counter, 17-year-old Marcus Rivera's hands shake as he holds up his phone, the red recording light steady despite his trembling fingers. Two other officers stand nearby, smirking, exchanging glances that say they've seen this before, that this is just another Tuesday morning. "Please," Diana whispers, blood trickling from her split lip. "My sister, General Bush Campbell. She's at Fort Henderson. Please, just call." Maxwell laughs, a harsh sound that cuts through the stunned silence of the diner. "Oh, your sister's a general? That's cute. And I'm the president." He looks at his fellow officers. "You hear this? We got ourselves a real VIP here, boys." The other officers chuckle. One of them, Officer Torres, shakes his head. They always got some story. Diana's vision blurs with tears, but she forces the words out. "Fort Henderson, 3rd Infantry Division. Please, just verify." "Lady, you're making this so much worse for yourself." Maxwell yanks her upright, and Diana cries out as pain shoots through her shoulder. "Filing a false report is a crime. So is assaulting an officer." "I didn't assault anyone." Diana's voice cracks. "I was just serving breakfast." Hello friends, welcome to Prime Story. Before we start, please like this video and subscribe. Also, tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Houston, London, maybe Jamaica or Canada. We want to know. So let's begin. 30 minutes earlier, the morning had been ordinary. Diana had tied her apron around her waist at 6:47 a.m., the same time she did every Tuesday through Saturday. The regulars had filed in. Old Man Patterson with his newspaper and black coffee. The construction crew from the Henderson project, Mrs. Chun who always ordered the vegetable omelet with extra toast. Diana had moved between tables with practiced efficiency, her smile genuine because she loved this job, loved the simple act of making someone's morning a little brighter. She'd paused at the register to adjust the small beacon on her keychain, a gift from her sister Bush before her last deployment. "That thing ever go off?" her manager, Greg, had asked, nodding at the device. Diana had shaken her head. "Hope it never has to." But Bush insisted, said she'd know if I ever needed her. "Overprotective much?" Greg had grinned. "You'd have to know Bush. She's intense, but she means well." Diana had smiled, thinking of her sister in her crisp military uniform. Always so serious, always so strong. "We video call tonight. She's supposed to tell me about her promotion ceremony." That had been 45 minutes ago, before the woman walked in. Jessica Hartwell had entered Pine Brook Diner like she owned it, her designer handbag swinging from her shoulder, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. She'd looked at Diana with the kind of assessment that reduced a person to nothing more than hired help. Less than human, certainly not worth basic courtesy. "Coffee. And make sure it's actually hot this time." Jessica hadn't even looked up from her phone. Diana had blinked. "Ma'am, I don't believe you've been here before." "I'm Diana, and I'll be. I don't need your life story." "Coffee." Now, Diana had swallowed her first response, painted on her professional smile, and nodded. "Of course. Would you like to see a menu?" "Obviously." Jessica had sighed dramatically. "Is everyone here this slow?" The coffee had been too hot, then too cold. The table was too close to the door, then too far from the window. The menu didn't have what she wanted. Why didn't they have fresh berries? What kind of establishment doesn't accommodate simple requests? Diana had remained calm through it all, apologizing where it wasn't needed, offering alternatives, trying everything she'd been trained to do to de-escalate a difficult customer. But nothing was enough. Nothing was ever going to be enough. "I want the eggs Benedict, but with smoked salmon instead of ham and hollandaise on the side, not on top, and the English muffin needs to be whole wheat, not regular." Diana had written it down carefully. "Ma'am, I apologize, but we don't have smoked salmon in stock today. I could offer you bacon instead, or we have a lovely vegetable. Are you stupid?" Jessica's voice had risen, sharp enough to turn heads. "I just told you what I want. I understand, but I'm explaining what we have available. No, you're being difficult. You're refusing to serve me." Jessica had stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I know what this is about. I see how you're looking at me." Diana's stomach had dropped. "Ma'am, I'm just trying to help. You're threatening me." Jessica's voice had climbed to a shout now, performing for the entire diner. "Everyone, this woman is threatening me." The other patrons had looked confused, exchanging glances. Mrs. Chun had actually stood up. "That's not what happened. The girl was just. Stay out of this." Jessica had whirled on her. "This woman threatened me, and I'm calling the police." "Please," Diana had said, her professional mask cracking. "I didn't threaten anyone. I was just explaining." But Jessica had already pulled out her phone, already dialed 911. "I need help. I'm at Pinebrook Diner on Maywood Avenue. There's a hostile employee here who's threatening me. She's being aggressive. I feel unsafe. Please hurry." Diana had stood frozen, watching her entire life about to be upended by a lie so obvious, so blatant, that surely the police would see through it. Surely they would listen to her. Surely the truth would matter. The 3 police officers had arrived 7 minutes later, walking in with hands near their belts, eyes scanning for threat. Jessica had pointed dramatically at Diana, her face a mask of practiced fear. "That's her. She threatened me. She was aggressive and hostile." Officer Maxwell had locked eyes with Diana immediately, his gaze cold, already decided. "Ma'am, we need you to step outside." "Officer, there's been a misunderstanding." Diana had kept her voice calm, steady. "I was just explaining our menu options. This customer requested something we don't have in stock, and I was offering alternatives. Don't talk back. Outside. Now." "But I didn't do anything wrong." Maxwell had grabbed her arm, his grip crushing. Diana had gasped, stumbling as he pulled her toward the door. "You're hurting me." The words had escaped before she could stop them. "Please, I have a sister, General Bush Campbell. She's stationed at Fort Henderson with the 3rd Infantry Division. You can verify." The laughter had cut her off. Maxwell had actually laughed in her face. "Oh, your sister's a general? Let me guess, your dad's the Secretary of Defense." Officer Torres had joined in. "And her boyfriend's a Navy SEAL, right? Come on, lady. You really think we're that stupid?" The 3rd officer, young and eager, had shaken his head. Diana had tried again, desperation creeping into her voice. "I'm not lying. Her name is Bush Campbell. She's a decorated officer. Please, just call Fort Henderson and verify. Stop lying." Maxwell had spun her around with such force that Diana had lost her footing, crashing into the nearest table. She tried to catch herself, but Maxwell was already on her, his hand between her shoulder blades, driving her down. That's when her face had met the table. The impact had exploded through her skull like fireworks. For a moment, Diana had seen nothing but white light and shooting stars. Then the pain had crashed over her in waves. Her cheekbone, her nose, her eye socket, all screaming in unison. "I said stop resisting." Maxwell had ground the words out as he forced her face harder against the table. "I'm not resisting." Diana had sobbed, the words muffled against the wood. "I'm not doing anything." The knee in her back had driven deeper. Her ribs compressed. Each breath became a battle. "Let me see your hands. They're right here. You can see them. Stop fighting me." "I'm not fighting." But the truth didn't matter. It had never mattered. From the moment Maxwell had looked at her, he'd seen what he expected to see. Jessica's words had simply confirmed what he'd already decided. Marcus had watched it all through his phone screen, his heart hammering so hard he thought it might burst from his chest. When Torres had noticed the recording, the officer had started toward him, but Marcus had backed into the corner, never lowering his phone. "Put that down, kid. I have the right to record." Marcus's voice had cracked, but he hadn't stopped. "You want to be arrested too? I'm not breaking any laws." Marcus had bumped against the wall, trapped, but still recording. Diana had heard this exchange through the ringing in her ears, through the pain and humiliation and crushing realization that this was actually happening. Someone was documenting this. Someone would see the truth. But what good would it do if she was dead before anyone could help? The handcuffs had closed around her wrists with brutal efficiency. Maxwell had lifted her partially off the table, only to slam her down again. this time forcing her cheek against broken ceramic. "Please," Diana had whispered, her lips barely moving. "Please stop. You should have thought about that before you threatened a customer." "I didn't threaten anyone. Please. I can't breathe." "You're talking. You can breathe." Blood had run from Diana's nose, warm and copper-tasting. One eye was already swelling shut. The other stared at the horrified faces of the patrons she'd served breakfast to every week for 3 years. Mrs. Chun had tears streaming down her face. Old man Patterson had his phone out, also recording. The construction crew looked ready to intervene, but what could they do against armed officers? Jessica had watched it all with satisfaction, arms crossed. "See? I told you she was dangerous." The beacon on Diana's keychain, pressed between her hip and Maxwell's knee, had activated without anyone noticing. The impact had been enough to trigger the emergency sensor. Across an ocean, in a military operations center that smelled of coffee and aviation fuel, a screen had flashed red. Sergeant Linda Morrison had been the first to see it. She'd been reviewing supply requisitions, bored out of her mind, when the alert had lit up her secondary monitor like a Christmas tree. "Emergency beacon activated." The words had been followed by a name that made her blood run cold. Diana Campbell. Linda had abandoned her desk at a sprint. She'd burst into the tactical briefing room where General Bush Campbell was mid-sentence, explaining a logistics strategy to 4 full colonels and a brigadier general. "General Campbell." Linda hadn't cared about protocol, hadn't cared about the breach in decorum. "Your sister's beacon." Bush had frozen, her pointer still aimed at the projection screen. For one heartbeat, the room had been silent. Then she'd turned, and the colonels had collectively taken a step back from the look on her face. "Show me." They'd moved to the operations center, Bush's long strides forcing everyone else to jog. Linda had pulled up the data, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Location: Pine Brook Diner, Maywood Avenue, Henderson City. Biometric data showing elevated heart rate, rapid breathing, and Linda had paused, swallowing hard. "Pain response indicators are through the roof, General. She's being hurt." Bush's jaw had clenched so hard Linda could hear her teeth grinding. "How long?" "Beacon activated 4 minutes ago. Get me aerial transport. Now. I want a rapid response team suited up in 3 minutes." Bush had already been moving toward the door. "And get me the Henderson City Police Chief on the line." "General, if this is a civilian matter, we may not have jurisdiction." Bush had turned on Colonel Harrison with eyes that could have melted steel. "That's my baby sister. Someone is hurting her. We're going. Anyone have a problem with that can take it up with me later." No one had objected. Back at Pine Brook Diner, Maxwell had finally hauled Diana to her feet, her legs barely supporting her weight. The right side of her face had already turned purple, swelling so badly her eye was nearly closed. "Let's go," Maxwell had said, dragging her toward the exit. Diana had stumbled, her head spinning. "My sister, please just verify." "Fort Henderson. Keep lying, and I'll add another charge." Maxwell had pushed her through the door into the bright morning sunlight. The police cruiser had waited at the curb. Torres had opened the back door, his expression carefully neutral. Up close, Diana had seen something flicker in his eyes. Uncertainty, maybe even regret, but he'd said nothing as Maxwell had shoved her into the back seat. Jessica had followed them out, her phone held high, recording her own version of events. "I want to press charges. Assault, threatening behavior, causing a disturbance." "We'll handle it, ma'am." Maxwell had barely glanced at her. "I want a full report. My husband sits on the city council, and I expect." "We'll handle it." Inside the police car, Diana had leaned her head against the window, her tears leaving streaks on the glass. Every breath hurt. Her face throbbed in time with her heartbeat. The handcuffs cut into her wrists. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. But it was. It absolutely was. She'd thought about Bush, about their video call scheduled for that evening. Bush would be so proud, talking about her promotion, about the ceremony, about the speech the commanding general had given. Diana had planned to tell her about the regular customer who'd left her a $50 tip last week, about Greg's terrible jokes, about the new apartment she'd been saving for. Now she'd have to tell her sister she'd been arrested, assaulted by police, accused of crimes she didn't commit. If she even got the chance. "What happens now?" Diana had asked quietly. Maxwell, in the driver's seat filling out paperwork, hadn't looked up. "You get processed. Booked. Arraigned." Maybe you'll make bail, maybe you won't. But I didn't do anything. That's what they all say. Torres had shifted uncomfortably in the passenger seat. Maxwell, maybe we should review the witness statements. That lady from the diner said. I don't care what she said. We have a victim who called 911. We have a suspect who resisted arrest. Open and shut. She didn't resist. She was just talking. Maxwell had finally looked up, his eyes hard. You questioning me, Torres? Torres had gone silent. Inside the diner, Marcus had already uploaded his video to 3 different platforms. His hands had still been shaking, adrenaline making him feel sick and wired at the same time. Did you get it all? Mrs. Chun had appeared at his side, her face pale. Everything. From when they first grabbed her. Marcus had watched his phone screen, the view counter already climbing. This is going to blow up. Good. Mrs. Chin's voice had been steel-wrapped in silk. Let the whole world see what they did to that sweet girl. The video had spread like wildfire. Within 10 minutes, it had 1,000 views. Within 20, 10,000. People shared it with outrage, with disbelief, with recognition of a story told too many times. Someone on a military forum had recognized the name Diana had repeated. Did she say General Campbell? Bush Campbell. Another user had confirmed it. Holy shit. General Bush Campbell of the 3rd Infantry. That's her sister. Those cops just assaulted a general's sister. The threat had exploded. At Fort Henderson, 3 Black Hawk helicopters powered up, their rotors beginning to spin. 23 military personnel climbed aboard, faces grim, weapons checked and secured. This wasn't a combat deployment, but they treated it with the same seriousness. Bush had buckled into the lead helicopter, her tactical vest snug over her uniform. Major Elizabeth Santos had taken the seat beside her. General, I've got Henderson City PD on the line. You want to talk to them? Not yet. Bush's voice had been cold, controlled. Let's see what we're walking into first. The police chief is asking what authority we have to. Tell him he can file a complaint with the Secretary of Defense after I have my sister back. Bush had stared straight ahead, her hands clenched into fists on her knees. How long? 18 minutes to target, General. 18 minutes. Diana had to survive 18 more minutes. The helicopters lifted off, their rotors beating the air like war drums. On the ground, military vehicles followed, forming a convoy that moved with purpose and precision. In the police car, Diana had closed her eyes, fighting waves of nausea. The pain in her face had settled into a constant throb. She could feel her eyes swelling more with each passing minute. Officer Maxwell, she tried one more time, her voice barely above a whisper. Please, I'm not lying about my sister. Just make one phone call. Lady, give it a rest. Her name is Bush Campbell. She's a general in the United States Army. She's stationed at Fort Henderson. That's 20 minutes from here. Please. Maxwell had sighed, exasperated. Fine. You know what? Let's play this out. Torres, call Fort Henderson. Ask for General Bush Campbell. Torres had hesitated. Sir, do it. Maybe when they tell her they've never heard of any General Campbell, she'll finally shut up. Torres had dialed, putting the call on speaker. Fort Henderson, how may I direct your call? Yeah, this is Officer Torres with Henderson City Police. I need to verify employment of someone claiming to have a relative stationed there. I can transfer you to personnel. A hold tone had played. Maxwell had smirked at Diana in the rearview mirror. This should be good. Diana had prayed silently. Please, please, please. Personnel, Corporal Jenkins speaking. This is Officer Torres, Henderson City PD. I need to verify if you have a General Bush Campbell stationed at your facility. A pause. Then, General Campbell? Yes, sir. She's currently deployed overseas, but Fort Henderson is her home station. May I ask what this is regarding? Maxwell's smirk had vanished. Torres had gone very still. Routine verification. Thank you. Torres had ended the call, not looking at Maxwell. The silence in the car had been deafening. Diana had opened her one good eye. I told you. Maxwell had gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles had turned white. That doesn't prove anything. You could have looked her up online. I'm her sister. Diana's voice had grown stronger despite the pain. My name is Diana Campbell. Bush is my older sister. She's been in the Army for 14 years. She's currently deployed with the 3rd Infantry Division. She sent me this emergency beacon before she left because she worries about me. And right now, she knows I'm in trouble. Torres had turned to look at Diana. Really look at her. and something like horror had crossed his face. Maxwell, if she's telling the truth. She's not. But what if she is? Then we'll handle it. Handle it? We just. Torres had lowered his voice. You slammed her face into a table. On camera. She was resisting. She was talking. Diana had watched this exchange with a distant sort of fascination, as if she were watching actors in a play rather than the officers who'd just assaulted her. Shock, probably. Her body's way of protecting her from the full reality of what was happening. A new sound had penetrated her fog, distant at first, then growing louder. A rhythmic thumping that made the car vibrate slightly. Helicopters. Maxwell had looked up at the sky, his face going pale. What the hell? The helicopters had appeared over the tree line, 3 of them flying in formation, military markings clear even from a distance. They descended toward the diner parking lot, the wind from their rotors sending debris flying, forcing bystanders to shield their faces. Torres had actually crossed himself. Oh my God! The helicopters had touched down with perfect precision, their doors opening before the skids had fully settled. Military personnel had poured out, moving with the coordinated efficiency of a well-trained unit. 23 men and women in tactical gear, weapons ready but not raised, forming a perimeter with practiced ease. And then she had stepped out. General Bush Campbell had emerged from the lead helicopter like an avenging angel, her uniform crisp despite the flight, her bearing that of someone who commanded hundreds with a single word. She'd been tall, broad-shouldered, with the same deep brown eyes as Diana but harder, sharper, forged by years of command and combat. At the same moment, the military convoy had arrived, for vehicles disgorging more personnel, creating an overwhelming show of force that made the local police officers look like children playing dress-up. Maxwell had climbed out of the car slowly, his hand instinctively moving toward his weapon before he'd remembered he was facing a small army. Bush had walked toward them with measured steps, her eyes scanning until they'd found the police car, until they'd locked onto Diana's face through the window. Diana had seen the moment her sister registered what she was seeing. The brief crack in that military composure, the flash of raw fury and anguish before the mask had snapped back into place. Who's in charge here? Bush's voice had carried across the parking lot, cutting through the helicopter noise like a blade. Maxwell had stepped forward, trying to project authority he no longer possessed. I am Officer Clinton Maxwell. And ma'am, with all due respect, this is a civilian matter. That woman in your vehicle is my sister. Bush had spoken each word with crystalline clarity. Take your hands off her. Now, ma'am, I understand you're concerned, but we're conducting a lawful arrest. Bush had closed the distance between them in 3 strides, stopping close enough that Maxwell had to tilt his head back to meet her eyes. You're conducting an assault on my baby sister, who did nothing wrong. The woman who called us said. I don't care what she said. Bush's voice had dropped to something below freezing. My sister doesn't threaten people. She serves breakfast. She tips her hairdresser 20%. She volunteers at the animal shelter on Sundays. She calls me every week just to check in. And right now, she's in your car with her face beaten to hell. So I'll say this one more time. Release her. Now. Maxwell had tried to hold his ground. How do I even know you're really? Major Santos had stepped forward, tablet in hand. General Bush Campbell, United States Army, serial number 344-72-9156. Graduated West Point, 2011. 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq. Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Distinguished Service Medal. Current Commanding Officer of the 3rd Infantry Division's Logistics Operations. Combat veteran with 14 years of distinguished service. Do you need to see her military ID? Or will her presence and the 23 armed military personnel backing her up suffice? Maxwell's face had gone from pale to gray. Let me see that video. Bush had held out her hand. Santos had pulled it up on the tablet. Marcus's recording, now viewed by over 200,000 people and climbing. Bush had watched it in silence, her jaw clenching tighter with each second. Diana stumbling, trying to explain. Maxwell grabbing her. Diana mentioning Bush's name. The officers laughing. Maxwell slamming Diana's face into the table. Her sister's muffled cry of pain. The handcuffs. The blood. Bush had handed the tablet back with careful control. Major Santos. Yes, General. Make sure that video is preserved as evidence. Multiple copies. Send one to the DOJ, one to the state attorney general, and one to every major news outlet you can think of. Already done, General. Bush had turned back to Maxwell. Open the car. Maxwell had fumbled for his keys, his hands shaking. He'd opened the back door, stepping aside quickly as Bush had knelt beside the vehicle. Diana. Bush's voice had transformed, all the hardness melting into something gentle, almost breaking. Sweetheart, I'm here. I've got you. Diana had looked at her sister through her one functioning eye, and the dam had finally broken. Bush, they wouldn't listen. I told them about you, and they laughed. They thought I was lying. I know, baby. I know. Bush had carefully examined Diana's face, her hands impossibly gentle as she tilted Diana's chin to see the full extent of the damage. Where are the handcuff keys? Maxwell had handed them over without being asked, not meeting Bush's eyes. Bush had removed the handcuffs with practiced efficiency, revealing angry red marks around Diana's wrists. Can you stand? I think so. Bush had helped her sister out of the car, supporting her weight as Diana had swayed on her feet. The gathered crowd, diner patrons, military personnel, and stunned police officers, had watched in silence as Bush had wrapped an arm around Diana's waist. Medic, Bush had called out. 2 military medics had approached with a stretcher, but Diana had shaken her head weakly. I can walk. Diana, I can walk. Diana had straightened slightly, drawing on reserves she didn't know she had. I'm not getting on a stretcher. I'm walking out of here. Pride had flickered across Bush's face. Okay, we'll walk together. They'd started toward the military medical vehicle, but Bush had paused, turning back to face the police officers. Officer Maxwell. Her voice had returned to that command tone that made grown men snap to attention. My sister told you who I was. She gave you specific information. My name, my rank, my location. She wasn't vague. She wasn't making up stories. She told you the truth, and you chose not to listen. Do you want to know why you chose not to listen? Maxwell had remained silent. It's because you looked at her and saw what you expected to see. You saw a black woman in a waitress uniform, and you decided she was lying. You decided she was guilty. You decided she deserved what you did to her. And you did it on camera, in front of witnesses, because you were so certain no one would care. I was responding to a complaint. You were responding to your own prejudices. Bush's voice had cracked like a whip. A wealthy white woman pointed at my sister and said she threatened me. And you didn't ask for evidence. You didn't interview witnesses. You didn't use your de-escalation training. You went straight to violence because that's what felt natural to you. Torres had spoken up, his voice small. General Campbell. We should have verified. Yes, you should have. Bush had turned her gaze on him. You stood by and watched your partner assault an innocent woman. You heard her tell you the truth, and you did nothing. That makes you just as guilty. Movement at the edge of the crowd had caught Bush's attention. Jessica Hartwell had been trying to slip away. Her earlier bravado completely evaporated in the face of actual consequences. Stop. Bush's voice had frozen Jessica mid-step. You. Come here. Jessica had turned slowly, her face a mask of barely contained panic trying to maintain superiority. I don't have to. No, you don't. But if you leave now, I will make it my personal mission to ensure your name is attached to this incident forever. So I suggest you come here. Jessica had approached, her designer heels clicking on the asphalt. Bush had looked at her for a long moment, and when she'd spoken, her voice had been quieter but somehow more devastating. What did my sister do to you? She was rude. What did she actually do? Specifically, Jessica had opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. She refused to serve me what I wanted. Because the diner didn't have it in stock. She should have made accommodations. Why? Bush had tilted her head slightly. Why should she have bent over backward for you? What makes you so special that basic inventory limitations don't apply? I'm a paying customer. Who called the police on a waitress explaining menu options? Bush had stepped closer. You knew what you were doing. You saw a black woman who wasn't giving you exactly what you wanted, and you weaponized the police against her. You turned them into your personal attack dogs. That's not. I felt threatened. By a waitress holding a notepad? Bush's voice had dripped with contempt. You want to know what real threat feels like? I've been shot at in Kabul. I've had mortars land 50 feet from my position. I've pulled wounded soldiers out of burning vehicles. That's threat. My sister explaining menu options? That's Tuesday morning. Jessica's composure had completely crumbled. My husband is on the city council. I don't care if your husband is the governor." Bush had leaned in, her voice dropping to something almost intimate in its intensity. "You didn't need to know who my sister was to treat her like a human being. That's the bare minimum of human decency. You failed that test, and now the whole world knows it." Jessica's face had gone red, tears of humiliation starting to form, but Bush had already turned away, dismissing her as thoroughly as if she'd ceased to exist. A police cruiser had pulled up, lights flashing, and the Henderson City Police Chief had emerged, his face already showing the stress of what was rapidly becoming a department-wide crisis. "General Campbell." Chief Warren had approached with careful deference. "I'm Chief Warren. I apologize for the delay. I was in a... Your officer assaulted my sister." Bush had cut him off, her patience clearly exhausted. "On camera, in front of multiple witnesses, after she specifically told him who I was and how to verify it. And instead of taking 30 seconds to make a phone call, he slammed her face into a table." Warren had looked at Diana, really seeing the damage for the first time, and all the color had drained from his face. "Oh my God, that video has been viewed by over 500,000 people in the last 20 minutes. It's on every major news site. Social media is exploding. Your department's phone lines are probably melting right now. So I want to be very clear about what happens next." Warren had nodded, clearly afraid to speak. "I want every officer involved in this incident suspended immediately, pending a full investigation. I want that investigation conducted by an independent body, not your internal affairs. I want body camera footage from all 3 officers preserved and made available to the district attorney. And I want it started today, not tomorrow. Today. It will be done, General. I give you my word." "Your word." Bush had laughed, a sound without humor. "Forgive me if I don't find that particularly reassuring, but it's a start." Bush had turned back to Diana, her expression softening again. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's get you checked out properly." The military medical vehicle had been converted into a mobile treatment unit, complete with examination equipment and a full array of supplies. Diana had sat on the padded bench while a medic, Sergeant First Class Rodriguez, had carefully examined her injuries. Significant facial bruising, mild concussion, possible hairline fracture of the zygomatic bone. Rodriguez had spoken quietly, documenting everything with photographs and notes. "You're going to need a full CT scan to rule out more serious trauma." "I'm okay," Diana had whispered. "You're not okay." Bush had sat beside her, holding her hand. "But you will be. I promise you that." "They wouldn't believe me." Diana's voice had cracked. "I told them about you, and they laughed at me. Like I was making it up. Like you weren't real." "I'm real. I'm right here. But what about everyone who doesn't have you?" Diana had looked at her sister with her one good eye, tears streaming down her swollen face. "What about all the people who don't have a sister who's a general? What happens to them?" Bush had been quiet for a long moment, her jaw working. "I don't know, baby. I don't know." Rodriguez had finished his preliminary examination. "General, I'm recommending immediate transport to Henderson Memorial for full evaluation. She needs imaging and probably should be observed for 24 hours given the head trauma." "Make it happen." "Already arranged. We've got an ambulance en route." Outside the medical vehicle, the scene had transformed into chaos. News vans had begun arriving, satellite dishes extending toward the sky. Reporters had set up positions behind the police line that had been hastily established. Dozens of bystanders had gathered, most of them filming on their phones. Marcus had found himself at the center of a media scrum, his original video now approaching 2 million views. "You were the one who recorded it." A reporter had thrust a microphone in his face. "Yeah." Marcus had still been shaking. I knew someone needed to see it. She kept saying her sister was a general, and they weren't listening, and I thought if I got it on video, someone would believe her." "Were you afraid they'd arrest you too?" "Terrified. But Diana, she needed someone to see the truth." Inside the medical vehicle, Bush had continued holding Diana's hand as they'd waited for the ambulance. "I should have been here. You're overseas. You couldn't have known. The beacon worked. I got here as fast as I could. But it wasn't fast enough. You came." Diana had squeezed her sister's hand weakly. "That's what matters. You always come. Always. That's not a maybe. That's forever." "Bush." "Yeah. They tried to make me disappear. To make me nothing. Just another face no one would remember. Another story no one would care about. You're not nothing. You're my sister. You're Diana Campbell." You matter, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows it. The ambulance had arrived, but before Diana could be transferred, Chief Warren had approached the medical vehicle again, this time with Maxwell, Torres, and the third officer in tow, General Campbell. Warren's voice had been strained. Officer Maxwell would like to. He wants to apologize. Bush had stood up, placing herself between the officers and Diana. No, ma'am, I think it would be appropriate. No. Bush's voice had been absolute. My sister doesn't need to hear his apology. She doesn't need to accept his remorse. She doesn't need to make him feel better about what he did. He can save his apologies for his lawyer. Maxwell had shifted uncomfortably. General, I just wanted to say, I don't care what you want. Bush had spoken over him. You had your chance to do the right thing. Multiple chances. You chose violence instead. You don't get to feel better now by apologizing to the woman you assaulted. Warren had stepped in quickly. All 3 officers are suspended without pay, effective immediately. Internal Affairs will begin their investigation today. Not Internal Affairs. Independent investigation. Yes, ma'am. The state police have already been contacted. Good. Bush had turned away from them, dismissing them as thoroughly as she'd dismissed Jessica. Diana, let's get you to the hospital. The transfer to the ambulance had been gentle, with Rodriguez and Bush accompanying Diana while Major Santos had taken command of the remaining military personnel. As the ambulance had pulled away, lights flashing but sirens silent, Marcus had uploaded his second video, footage of the military arrival, the confrontation, and Diana being helped to the medical vehicle. This one had gone viral even faster than the first. At Henderson Memorial Hospital, Diana had been whisked into radiology within minutes of arrival, the staff moving with unusual urgency. The power of having a general as your sister, Diana had thought dimly. Or maybe just the power of obvious injustice. The CT scan had revealed what Rodriguez had suspected: a hairline fracture of the cheekbone, significant soft tissue swelling, and a mild concussion. No brain bleed, no permanent damage. She would heal. Physically, at least. In the private room they'd given her, another perk of general sister privilege, Diana had lain back against the pillows while Bush had pulled a chair close to the bed. You should go back, Diana had said. To your deployment. You can't just leave. Already handled. I've got 72 hours emergency leave. After that, we'll see. Bush, I'm okay. You don't need to. Diana. Bush had taken her hand again. When I got that alert, when I saw your location and your vitals. I've been in combat. I've been under fire. I've had people trying to kill me. And I've never been more terrified than I was in that helicopter, flying here, not knowing if I'd find you alive. I'm sorry I activated it. I didn't mean to. Don't you dare apologize. Bush's grip had tightened. That beacon exists for exactly this reason. You needed me. I came. That's how this works. A knock on the door had interrupted them. A hospital administrator had entered, followed by a man in an expensive suit carrying a briefcase. Ms. Campbell, General Campbell. I'm David Chun, Hospital Counsel. And this is Marcus Rivera. He's been asking to see you. Marcus had stood in the doorway, looking young and uncertain and still holding his phone. I just wanted to make sure you were okay. I'm the one who recorded it. Diana had smiled, or tried to, though the swelling made it difficult. You're the brave one. Come in. Marcus had approached slowly. I was so scared. But I thought, someone had to see what they were doing. Someone had to know the truth. You did the right thing. Diana's voice had been soft, but clear. Thank you for seeing me. For not looking away. Everyone should have seen you. Marcus had blinked back tears. You didn't deserve that. No one deserves that. After Marcus had left, promising to send Diana the original video files, Bush had stood and walked to the window. Outside, the parking lot had been filling with protesters, dozens at first, then hundreds, carrying signs that read, "Justice for Diana," and "Badge doesn't mean brutality," and "Black Lives Matter." It's starting, Bush had said quietly. What is? The reckoning. Bush had turned back to Diana. That video has been viewed 15 million times now. It's on every news channel. Social media is exploding. The police department is under siege. The mayor's office is getting death threats. This isn't just about you anymore, Diana. It's about everyone like you. Everyone who's been treated like they don't matter. Diana had closed her good eye, exhaustion washing over her. I just wanted to serve breakfast. I know, but you've become something bigger now, whether you wanted it or not. Over the next 3 days, While Diana had recovered in the hospital under her sister's watchful protection, the world had erupted. Maxwell, Torres, and the third officer, Benjamin Hayes, had been formally charged with assault, civil rights violations, and filing false reports. Their body camera footage, which they'd conveniently forgotten to activate, had become its own scandal. The department's pattern of similar, forgotten activations and other incidents involving minorities had launched a federal investigation. Jessica Hartwell had tried to issue a public apology, but the internet had been merciless. Her husband had resigned from the city council. Her employer had placed her on indefinite leave. Every social media account had been flooded with comments calling her what she was, a woman who'd weaponized her privilege against an innocent person. The protests had grown. Henderson City had been joined by demonstrations in 30 other cities, all carrying Diana's name, all demanding reform. News crews had camped outside the hospital, desperate for a statement. Bush had kept them at bay with military precision, allowing no one near Diana's room without explicit approval. On the fourth day, Diana had been released. Bush had brought her home to their childhood house, the one where they'd grown up with their mother before she'd passed, the one that had been sitting empty since Diana had gotten her apartment. "Stay here," Bush had insisted, "at least until I have to go back." They'd sat together in the living room that evening, Diana's face still swollen and discolored but healing, Bush in civilian clothes for the first time in years. "I've been thinking," Diana had said, her voice stronger now, "about what you said, about me becoming something bigger." "Diana, you don't have to. No, listen, all those people protesting, all those comments and messages, they're not really about me. I'm just the face, the story. But this happens every day to people who don't have videos, who don't have sisters who are generals, who don't have anything but their word against the system." Bush had nodded slowly. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to speak. Publicly. I want to tell my story, but more than that, I want to talk about everyone else's stories. The ones we don't hear. The media will eat you alive. You know that, right? They'll dissect every part of your life. Let them." Diana had sat forward, ignoring the pain the movement caused. "I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of making myself small. Maxwell tried to break me, but I'm still here. And I'm going to use that." Bush had studied her sister for a long moment, and something like pride had flickered across her face. "Okay, then we do it right. We control the narrative. I'll arrange a press conference." The press conference had been scheduled for the following afternoon at the Henderson City Community Center. By noon, the parking lot had been overflowing, with media trucks from every major network and dozens of local outlets. Inside, 200 seats had been set up. Every one was filled, with another 100 people standing in the back. Diana had stood backstage, her hands shaking slightly, as Bush had adjusted her collar. "You don't have to do this," Bush had said quietly. "Say the word, and we leave. I have to do this. For me. For everyone like me. Then I'm right here. The whole time." They'd walked onto the stage together, Bush in full dress uniform, Diana in a simple blue dress that her mother would have loved. The camera flashes had been blinding. The room had fallen silent. Diana had approached the microphone, looking out at the sea of faces, reporters, protesters, community members, all waiting to hear what she had to say. She'd taken a breath, felt Bush's presence beside her, and begun to speak. "My name is Diana Campbell. I'm 27 years old. I'm a waitress at Pine Brook Diner, or at least I was. I'm not sure if I still have a job." A nervous laugh had rippled through the audience. "I'm also a sister, a daughter, a friend. I volunteer at the animal shelter. I tip my hairdresser 20%. I call my sister every week just to check in. I'm a person, a human being, with dreams and fears and hopes like everyone else." Diana had paused, gathering strength. 6 days ago, I served breakfast to a customer who was unhappy with our menu options. I explained what we had available. I remained professional. I did my job, and for that, she called the police and accused me of threatening her. The room had been silent except for the clicking of cameras. When the officers arrived, I tried to explain. I told them about my sister, General Bush Campbell. I gave them specific information about where she was stationed, her rank, her unit. I thought if I could just make them understand, if I could just give them something to verify, they would listen. Diana's voice had started to shake. But they didn't listen. They laughed at me. They called me a liar. And then Officer Clinton Maxwell grabbed me. And when I tried to explain again, He slammed my face into a table so hard it fractured my cheekbone. Bush had stepped slightly closer, not touching but present. I want to be very clear about something. Diana had looked directly into the cameras. I wasn't protected because of who my sister is. I should have been protected because I'm a human being. Every person in this country, regardless of their skin color or their job or their connections, deserves to be treated with basic dignity. That's not a privilege. That's a right. The crowd had begun to stir, murmurs of agreement building. But the truth is, not everyone has a sister who's a general. Not everyone has someone who can mobilize helicopters and arrive with enough force to make people pay attention. Most people just have their word and their truth, and we've built a system where that's not enough. Where video evidence has become necessary because human testimony is considered worthless. Diana had gripped the podium. I'm standing here today because I want to tell you about all the people who aren't standing here. All the people who experienced what I experienced and didn't have a beacon to activate, didn't have a video recording their assault, didn't have anyone with enough power to make people care. Their names matter too. Their pain matters too. Their humanity matters too. Bush had watched her sister with open pride now, no longer hiding it. Officer Maxwell is facing charges. That's good. That's justice. But justice for one person isn't enough. We need systemic change. We need accountability that doesn't depend on viral videos and public outrage. We need a society where I felt threatened by a black woman existing in my space isn't considered reasonable grounds for calling the police. Diana's voice had grown stronger with each word. I'm not just a victim. I'm a survivor. And I'm using my voice to speak for everyone who's been silenced. Everyone who's been dismissed. Everyone who's been hurt and had their pain minimized because they couldn't prove it, couldn't record it, couldn't make people believe them. The audience had erupted in applause, but Diana had held up a hand. I'm not done. I want to say something to the woman who called the police on me. Jessica Hartwell, I'm not going to curse you. I'm not going to wish harm on you. But I want you to understand something. You saw me as less than human. You saw me as a threat because I didn't cater to your every demand. And you used the police as your personal weapon because you knew they would believe you over me. That's the power of privilege. The power to weaponize authority against people who have less than you. And until we all recognize that power and refuse to use it, nothing will change. Diana had looked out at the crowd, at the protesters holding signs with her name, at the reporters documenting every word. My sister taught me something when we were kids. She said, never bow to injustice. Stand up even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. So that's what I'm doing. I'm standing up. And I'm asking all of you to stand with me. Not just for me. For everyone. For every person who's been dismissed, degraded, dehumanized. For every story that didn't go viral. For every video that wasn't recorded. For every truth that wasn't believed. Diana had stepped back from the microphone. Her piece said, her truth told. The crowd had risen as one, applauding so loudly the windows had rattled. Bush had wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. I'm proud of you, Bush had whispered in her ear. Mom would be so proud. Diana had leaned into her sister's embrace, letting the tears flow freely now. Not tears of pain, but of release. Of speaking her truth and being heard. The questions from reporters had come fast and furious after that. Diana had answered them all, her voice never wavering. Bush's presence a constant anchor beside her. What do you want to see happen to Officer Maxwell? I want him prosecuted to the full extent of the law. I want his actions to have consequences. But more than that, I want the system that created him reformed. He's not an aberration. He's a product. Do you blame the diner for what happened? The diner didn't do anything wrong. Greg, my manager, tried to de-escalate. My coworkers supported me. This isn't about Pine Brook. This is about a culture that tells certain people they can weaponize the police against others with impunity. What message do you have for other victims of police violence? Diana had taken a moment with that one, choosing her words carefully. I want to tell them that their pain is valid. Their truth matters. Even if no one believed them. Even if there's no video. Even if they don't have a general for a sister. They are not alone. We see you. We believe you. And we're fighting for you. General Campbell, why did you bring military force to a civilian situation? Bush had leaned toward the microphone, her voice crisp and professional. My sister activated an emergency beacon indicating she was in physical danger. I responded as any family member would, with every resource at my disposal. The fact that I have military resources available doesn't change the fundamental equation. Someone was hurting my sister. I stopped them. Were you concerned about overreach? I'm more concerned about underreach. About how many times this happens when there's no one with resources to intervene. My sister got help because of who I am. That's privilege. And it's wrong. Everyone should get help. Everyone should be protected. That's the conversation we should be having. The press conference had lasted 90 minutes. By the time Diana and Bush had walked off stage, every major news outlet in the country had been running the story. Diana's statement had been played and replayed, dissected and discussed. In the days that followed, the ripple effects had continued to spread. The Henderson City Police Department had announced a complete review of their use of force policies. The mayor had promised independent oversight of all police misconduct investigations. The state attorney general had opened a civil rights investigation into the department's practices. Maxwell, Torres, and Hayes had all been indicted by a grand jury. Their trials were scheduled for 6 months out, but legal experts had already begun predicting guilty verdicts based on the video evidence alone. Jessica Hartwell had left Henderson City entirely, moving to another state, though the internet's memory was long and unforgiving. Marcus Rivera had been invited to speak at schools about the importance of documenting injustice, about being willing to stand up even when it's frightening. Diana had returned to Pine Brook Diner after 3 weeks. Greg had welcomed her back with tears in his eyes and a raise he'd somehow convinced the owner to approve. The regular customers had given her a standing ovation. Even new customers had come just to meet her, to thank her for speaking out. But the real change had been quieter, more personal. Letters had arrived at the diner by the hundreds. Stories from people across the country who'd experienced similar injustices but had never been believed. People who'd been too afraid to speak up. People who'd spoken up and been ignored. Diana had read every single one, and she'd started writing back. 1 month after the incident, Diana and Bush had sat together on the porch of their childhood home. Bush's emergency leave had been extended, then extended again, as the Army had recognized the value of having a high-profile officer associated with the civil rights conversation. "You know they're going to want you to keep doing this," Bush had said, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. Speaking, advocating, being the face of reform. "I know." Diana had pulled her knees up to her chest. Her face finally healed except for a small scar on her cheekbone that she'd decided not to have removed. "Is that wrong? To become the thing they tried to make me?" "What do you mean?" "They tried to make me a victim, a statistic, a forgotten story. And now I'm something else. A symbol, maybe. Is that just playing into it?" Bush had been quiet for a moment. "You're not playing into anything. You're taking what they tried to do to you and transforming it. That's not weakness. That's power. It feels big. Scary big. It is big. But you don't have to do it alone." Bush had reached over, taking her sister's hand. "I'm here. For as long as you need me. You can't stay forever. You have a career." "Diana." Bush had squeezed her hand. "You're my sister. My baby sister. There is nothing, and I mean nothing, more important than that. If you need me to resign my commission and stay here with you, I will do it without a second thought. I would never ask you to. You don't have to ask. That's what family means." They'd sat in comfortable silence as the sun had sunk lower, painting the world in shades of gold. "Bush." "Yeah. Thank you. For coming. For believing me. For being exactly who you've always been." "Always, Diana." "That's not a promise. That's a fact." 3 months after the incident, Diana had been invited to speak at a congressional hearing on police reform. She'd sat at a table facing dozens of representatives, cameras recording every word, and she'd told her story again. But this time, she'd ended with specific policy recommendations, with data on use of force incidents, with proposals for independent oversight. She'd become more than a victim, more than a survivor. She'd become an advocate. 6 months after the incident, Officer Clinton Maxwell had been convicted on all charges. He'd received a 5-year prison sentence and would never work in law enforcement again. Torres and Hayes had taken plea deals, receiving lighter sentences in exchange for testimony about department culture. Diana had attended the sentencing hearing. When the judge had asked if she wanted to make a victim impact statement, she'd stood and faced Maxwell across the courtroom. "Officer Maxwell, I want you to know that I forgive you." The courtroom had gone silent. "Not because what you did was okay. It wasn't. Not because you deserve forgiveness. You don't. but because carrying hatred for you would poison me, and I refuse to let you have that power over my life." She'd paused, letting the words sink in. "But forgiveness doesn't mean no consequences. You hurt me. You traumatized me. You reinforced every fear that Black people have about interacting with police. And you did it because you couldn't see my humanity. I hope you learn to see it now. I hope you spend your time in prison thinking about all the people like me that you've encountered. All the people you didn't beat, but whose dignity you dismissed. All the times you let your prejudices guide your actions. I hope you become better. Not for me. For everyone else who'll encounter people like you in the future." Maxwell had looked at her, really looked at her for the first time, and something like shame had crossed his face. 1 year after the incident, Diana had been invited to speak at her sister's promotion ceremony. Bush had been elevated to brigadier general, one of the youngest in the Army's history, and she'd specifically requested that Diana give the opening remarks. Diana had stood at the podium in front of hundreds of military personnel, her voice steady and strong. "My sister taught me that service means sacrifice. That leadership means being willing to stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. That courage isn't the absence of fear, but acting despite it. She demonstrated all of those qualities when she came for me. When I needed her most, she didn't hesitate. She didn't calculate risk or political fallout. She just came." Diana had looked at Bush, standing at attention in her dress uniform, medals gleaming. "That's who she is. That's who she's always been. And I'm honored to be her sister." The ceremony had been beautiful, full of tradition and honor. But afterward, in the quiet moments when it was just the two of them, Bush had pulled Diana aside. "You know what the best part of that promotion is?" "What?" "More resources. More authority. More ability to help people like you." Bush had smiled. "I'm creating a program. Military support for victims of civil rights violations. Emergency response, legal aid, protective custody if needed. It's going to be called the Diana Initiative." Diana's eyes had filled with tears. "Bush, you don't have to. I want to. Your story changed things, Diana. It changed me. And I want to make sure that everyone who needs help gets it, whether they have a general for a sister or not." 2 years after the incident, Pine Brook Diner had become something of a landmark. People came from across the country to eat there, to meet Diana if she was working, to see the place where a viral moment had sparked a movement. Diana still worked there 3 days a week. The other 4 days, she traveled, speaking at conferences in schools and community centers. She'd written a book about her experience, with all proceeds going to civil rights organizations. She'd met with the families of other victims of police violence, offering support and solidarity. But she always came back to the diner, back to the simple act of serving breakfast, of making someone's morning a little brighter. Because that's who she was. That's who she'd always been. On the second anniversary of the incident, Marcus Rivera, now 19 and a journalism student, had published a long-form piece about the lasting impact of his video. It had been titled "The Day I Stopped Being a Bystander." "I think about that morning constantly," he'd written. "I think about how scared I was, how my hands shook, how I almost put the phone down when that officer yelled at me. But I didn't. And that decision changed everything." Diana Campbell is a hero, but she shouldn't have needed to be one. She should have been able to serve breakfast in peace. She should have been believed when she told the truth. She should have been treated like a human being. We've made progress. Policies have changed. Officers have been trained. Awareness has grown. But the work isn't done. It won't be done until no one needs to activate an emergency beacon to get justice. Until no one needs video evidence to be believed. Until being Black in America doesn't mean being constantly suspected, constantly diminished, constantly at risk. Diana taught me that. She taught all of us. And we owe it to her, and to everyone like her, to keep fighting, to keep standing up, to never look away. That evening, Diana and Bush sat together on that same porch where they'd sat so many times before. The protesters were gone now. The media had moved on to other stories, but the change remained. The small victories and the larger reforms, the conversations that continued to happen, the slow shift in consciousness. "Do you ever regret it?" Bush asked quietly. "Becoming so public? Taking on all this?" Diana thought about it, really thought about it. She thought about the hate mail and the death threats and the trolls who still blamed her for what happened. She thought about the PTSD that made her flinch at loud noises, the nightmares where she felt Maxwell's hand on her back again. But she also thought about the letters from people she'd helped, the families she'd supported, the policies that had changed because she'd spoken up, the teenagers who'd told her she'd inspired them to stand up against injustice. No, she said finally. I don't regret it. They tried to break me. They tried to make me disappear. But I'm still here, still standing, still fighting. And I won't stop until everyone has what I had. Someone who believes them, someone who fights for them, someone who says your dignity matters. Bush smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed her entire face. Mom would be so proud of you. She'd be proud of both of us. They sat in silence as the sun set once again. Two sisters who'd faced down injustice and won, not because one of them had power, but because both of them refused to accept that cruelty was inevitable, that change was impossible, that one person's voice didn't matter. Diana Campbell had been just a waitress serving breakfast, just a sister, just a person trying to live her life with dignity. And when the world tried to take that dignity away, she'd stood up and demanded it back. Not just for herself, for everyone. If you want more stories filled with danger, love, power, and heart-stopping twists like this, make sure you subscribe to Prime Mystery Hub. Turn on notifications so you never miss the next chapter, because trust me, what comes next will shake everything they thought they knew.